All right, welcome everybody. This is the Sports Casual. My name's Jack Paisley, and today is a great day. It's a borderline American holiday here in the U.S., and today was the Super Bowl. And the Philadelphia Eagles played the Kansas City Chiefs. And if you can't tell, I'm pretty excited because the Chiefs got their ass beat like a drum by the Philadelphia Eagles. They end up winning 40-22 in a game that was never outside of the first quarter, never close. And that score is closer than it should be because they got two garbage time touchdowns at the end. They caught a fucking bomb to Xavier Worthy at the end that got him to 22. I think DeAndre Hopkins caught a touchdown as well. Either way, never fucking close. Fuck the Chiefs. Great day. I am a notorious Chiefs hater, so if you're a Chiefs fan, thank you for watching. Take all this with a grain of salt. Again, I'm sure we'd get along fine just in person, be best of friends. But the second those ugly ass red jerseys go on, hate your team. And they got their ass beat like a drum by the better roster. And today, I think we saw a couple things come to fruition, however you say that word. One, I think that Jalen Hurts at this current time has elevated himself into the second best quarterback in Eagles franchise history behind Randall Cunningham. I think he is now successfully passed Donovan McNabb with this win. He's now been to two Super Bowls, won one. In the first one, balled out, and done, realistically, he did enough to actually win the game. Just didn't like his defense wasn't good enough. The Chiefs played out of their minds, and yeah, they lost that game. But with this win, I think he has elevated himself to that second best quarterback in Eagles franchise history, and wouldn't shock me if he ended up getting arguably to the number one. The thing with Jalen Hurts is like he's not a pure quarterback, so you're dealing with like a ounce of he's a running back mixed with a quarterback because he's not a very naturally gifted thrower of the ball. He threw it pretty well today. He was 17 of 22, 212 yards, two touchdowns and an interception, and then 72 yards. So he actually, I believe I saw that he's actually the first player to lead his team in passing and rushing yards in multiple Super Bowls. I might be off on that, but I'm pretty positive I saw that. So the thing when you're judging Jalen Hurts is you're looking at like it's kind of like Cam Newton back in the day, other outside of his MVP season, is you're combining this weird power runner with like a limited thrower of the football. That's just all in all just a crazy athlete. That's really what you got to view Jalen Hurts as. He's a quarterback. Like at this point, if you took the running ability out of Lamar past the line of scrimmage, he's still a really good quarterback. If you did that with Jalen Hurts, he'd struggle. But all in all, I think you now see that this dude is the second best quarterback in Eagles franchise history. And going along with that, I think we saw the elevation of Nick Sirianni, who everybody in their mother called for his basically resignation at the end of, or not, like they wanted to cut him basically. They didn't want him to resign. They wanted the Eagles to can him because they fell apart at the end of last year, basically. Outside of that, he's been really good. And this year, they're really they're just a good team. Howie Roseman, who's the GM of the Eagles, put together the best roster in football, make big swings, and they're going to be a contender next year too. Because unless a bunch of players retire, I don't believe they're losing a bunch of players. They still got Jalen Hurts, they still got AJ Brown, they still got Devontae Smith. Lane Johnson might retire. That'd probably be the biggest loss that I can think of off the top of my head. They got Cooper DeJean's on a rookie concert or contract. This was his first year. And then you got Saquon, who's the focal point of that offense. And you couldn't be happier for just like a person that seems like a great guy, like a family man. His daughter's always around. Like every pregame, they get a video of them hanging out. That you just can't. You gotta be happy for the guy. Like the Giants wasted that dude's career for 6 years. First year, he's on a capable organization and like shown how good he actually can be. It's a Super Bowl. with him being the star of the show. Like I mean, like today it was Jalen Hurts was the star and winning Super Bowl MVP, but the season and then today, like he's the star of the show. Like this game, the Chiefs solely focused on taking Saquon out of the game, and it showed because the rest of the players elevated themselves to offset that. Because Saquon didn't even have that great of a game. Like he was like you could just tell that their whole game plan was to limit him and not let him beat them. And to be fair to the Chiefs, they didn't. And then, so I think you saw the second best quarterback in Eagles franchise history, and then the best head coach of all time for the Eagles. I think his body of work outweighs Andy Reid out there because he's got that Super Bowl. And I'm not arguing that Andy Reid's the better coach, or not the better coach overall, but as an Eagles specific coach, I think that you can now say Nick Sirianni is better than Andy Reid was. Just because he won the Super Bowl and he was there multiple times, and that's not something that Andy could do. And in theory, he had the better assets. Like he had Mike Vick, he had Donovan McNabb when he was there, both very capable quarterbacks, and didn't get it done. He had To at one point too. So I think comfortable saying that as of right now, he's the best Eagles coach we've seen. And then jumping over the Chiefs, like I think this showed you, like the refs weren't calling a lot tonight, either side. They were letting them play out, and like everybody had kind of flipped on this Chiefs team halfway through the season. They were kind of like, "This is the best 8-0 team or whatever they undefeated team that we've seen. They're the worst one, but they're still undefeated. They're winning these tight games. Like you just gotta trust them. Like they're the Chiefs. The Chiefs is the Chiefs is what everybody was saying. And when you saw that the calls weren't going their way and they're playing against another really good team, which Philly is a really good roster, even if it's not a great air raid attack like a lot of the league, great team. And the Chiefs got handled in every aspect of that game. And yeah, like Patrick Mahomes' stats are gonna look better because he's got those two garbage touchdowns at the end. But he threw for 257, three touchdowns and two interceptions. You take those last two garbage touchdowns, he was one touchdown and two interceptions. That I think you saw that the Chiefs got, I won't say lucky to get to the Super Bowl, but they had almost everything go their way. And when things weren't going their way from a officiating standpoint, and then just random luck, like I think you saw that Philly kicked their ass because they weren't the the team of destiny that everybody has been talking about. That they managed to win these close games by a mixture of luck and then having an excellent coach and having just calls go their way. So which to be fair is a football game. But I think you saw that this team just wasn't that crazy team, and I think you saw that Patrick Mahomes, while he's an excellent quarterback, is not that. I would still take Tom Brady over Patrick, to be honest. I think that this kills his greatest of all time argument a little bit as of right now. Like we can still have this once he's done, but if he had gotten this three-peat, everybody and their mother would be all up on his nutsack talking about how he's the greatest of all time. Tom Brady never did this, and so on. And I think there's a weird poetic justice that Tom Brady was calling this game because you were watching him struggle in front of everybody. And yeah, I mean they're gonna be in the run every year as long as Andy Reid is there. But yeah, they got their ass beat like a drum, and we probably saw, if we're realistic, we saw the greatest postseason tight end career probably come to the end. Because I would bet that Travis Kelsey retires at the end, and he's become a circus with the whole Taylor Swift thing, which I have nothing against. I hope they work out perfectly as a couple. Like I wish them nothing but the best in that sense, the football sense. I hate seeing Taylor Swift on the screen as a fan. They're just forcing it down my throats. But besides that, I think we saw the last game of Travis Kelsey's career, which, especially with the success of his podcast with his brother and all the marketability that Jason's got, let alone when Travis retires, I think you see the end of that career. He's older. Had a fairly down year by his standards. That I think you saw the end of Travis Kelsey as well, which we'll see if Mahomes is the same because he's been that safety blanket since he was a younger guy, and Xavier Worthy is elevated himself into probably that number one receiver. That I think it's time for Travis to hang him up. And as a Broncos fan, I'm not sorry to see him go, but excellent tight end. I've have him as my number two overall. I don't think he's a good enough blocker to put at one, just because tight end encompasses blocking and receiving. I'd still put Gronk as the best that I ever saw, but he's definitely in that argument with like the Tony Gonzalez and him. Basically, those are the only two that I would put in that category. You can maybe argue Antonio Brown, but I think that's a tough argument to make. So all in all, it's just a great day. Like I was gonna be really bummed if the Chiefs won another one, if I'm honest. So thank God Philly got out to that massive lead and just could run up the clock. And then kind of spiraling off that, there was news that came out that Kellen Moore, who's actually the OC for the Eagles, is expected to or be hired by the New Orleans Saints. This is not confirmed yet, but that is the rumor that ESPN has officially released. So Kellen Moore's gonna have a really good 2 weeks. When's the Super Bowl with the Eagles? Who, yeah, he left the Cowboys to go over to the Eagles. I'm sure they paid him more money and stuck it to Jerry, who did not offer him the Cowboys job, which everybody kind of thought he would. And then he's going to go and take the Saints head coaching job and make probably double to triple the money. So good for that dude. I don't think the Saints are going to be amazing next year. They have kind of just that bridge quarterback with. I don't think Rattler showed that he's special. I mean, he's a young guy, so who knows? But Derek Carr is going to be that number one guy going into camp unless they draft somebody or trade somebody or free agent sign, which could all happen. But I think at this point in his career, Derek Carr is a tough sell to be a franchise quarterback, and I think the thing that really helped Kellen Moore secure this job is you saw his range offensively. In Dallas, he was very pass centric with Dak and all that kind of stuff, and the air raid offense they ran. And then this year, they were a run first team, so he showed the range that he can call offensively based off of his personnel that they have. So uh, I think this is a great signing by the Saints, to be honest. The only other one I would have realistically, or I would have considered two. Mike McCarthy, I think just because he's a tried and true guy, just to bring some stability to the organization. I don't think he's a sexy pick. I don't think he redefines a culture, but he just stabilizes the franchise that's been in constant flux. So I would have looked at him, and then the other one was the head coach from Notre Dame. If you wanted to roll the dice on a risky pick, but I'm not surprised I went with Kellen Moore. I mean, offensive coaches have tended to be the way of the future in the NFL lately, unless you're a Sean McDermott or a Harbaugh, basically. Outside of that, I just think it's gonna be a solid pick. I think he'll work most likely as well as they get the quarterback. It's like Ben Johnson with the Bears said it as good as anybody. It's at this point it's a quarterback driven league. If you don't have a capable quarterback, you can't win in the NFL at this point. No matter how good your roster is. Like you even saw the Eagles this year. Like you had to have a crazy outstanding roster to help elevate a I would say a mediocre to slightly I would say I'd put Jalen Hurts above mediocre, but not a top 10 quarterback in the league right now. So as if they can figure out that quarterback spot, I think he'll be success. Otherwise, it'll be another constant state of turnover. NFL owners don't tend to be very patient, so I bet if I was betting that if they don't win in the 2 years, he'll be out. Which sucks if you're that guy, but you're gonna be paid a lot of money, so you gotta respect that. And then some theoretical trade news. Is Debo Samuel apparently has requested the right to look for a trade partner with the 49ers. And I think the 49ers are going to learn their lesson from Brandon Ayuk. Debo's getting up there in age. He's a very vocal player on what's happening within that franchise that I would be surprised if he is back at the 49ers this time. He's already requested a trade once. Used that to try to get some leverage to on how he was used as a player, and then how to re-sign his deal as a wide receiver in comparison with more like a running back room. That I would be surprised if the 49ers actually bring him back if this is a real report that he uh informed them that he wants to be traded. That I think he's going to be traded. I don't think he's going to have as crazy big a market as he might have had 2 years ago, just because of he's one of the most injury prone players. Just the way he plays the game, dude gets beat up. I mean, he's a borderline running back that's a capable receiver as well. Excellent player, not taking that away from him, but when you're that injury prone, you're getting up there in age, and you're gonna want to be paid, which rightfully so. He's a high performing player within the NFL. It's a tough trade value, in my opinion. It's gonna be similar to like a Cooper Cup, and I would probably take Cup over Debo just because he's been slightly healthier. But I think he's gonna end up being cut similar to how I predicted, you know, Cooper Cup would be. I think that it's the same group of player or of teams that would actually look to trade for him. Granted, I think he's going to be a more approachable because I think his contract's a little bit more reasonable than Cooper Cup. But I think it's going to be the Patriots, maybe the Saints, Raiders, like Tennessee. That level of team. I don't anticipate Debo going to a contender unless he's willing to take a pay cut, which most of these players aren't willing to do. And I get it. Like they're independent contractors. They're trying to make as much money outside of the quarterback position to last them the rest of their life, and rightfully so. So I think he's going to be cut, and then he'll if he's cut, he has the right to go wherever the fuck he wants. Like you can, these guys are trying to go ring chase. Like you saw D Hop, I think, or I'm pretty sure he got D Hop might have gotten traded, but you see like Kareem Hunt or Juju Smith-Schuster go chase rings with, you know, Patrick Mahomes. You'll see guys go to the Ravens for Lamar Jackson or the Bills. Bills aren't really a destination most people want to go, just because of the weather and then the taxes. But I think you're going to see a couple of big name receivers and just players on the open market, and I think you're going to be surprised at the level of interest that you're going to see. And then we had a big UFC pay per view this week. So switching away from the NFL, the main event, which we'll really only talk about two of these fights. The rest of the card was fun to watch, but no big names. Was Dricus Plessis versus Sean Strickland, and Sean Strickland got his ass beat as well, just like the Chiefs. Got a unanimous decision against him for Dricus Plessis, who is the current champion, and this is the rematch and probably the nail in the coffin for Sean as a legitimate title contender as long as Dricus is the champ. It wasn't a very close fight, and the way that Sean fights is not overly fan friendly. Even though he's a stand up fighter, he's super defensive. That he's not super fun to watch unless you're into defense really. Uh, Talks a lot of crazy shit just to say wild shit. So I like if I was honest, I wanted Drickus to win this fight. I've kind of come off of the Sean Strickland hype bus a while ago. When he beat Izzy for the first time, it was just that perfect like underdog story. So I was happy for him that, and then he just went. The reason I came off of him is if you watch any of his press conferences, he says wild shit, and it's almost just to say wild stuff. He talks shit on guys that basically aren't construction workers or fighters just because they're not real men. Like he just like he says very off colored shit. He's like the put the women in the kitchen kind of guy. And I don't believe that he actually believes a lot of it. I think he says it just to say it, and even if he believes it, he kind of backs off the second it's pushed on. So if he's like put woman in kitchen, what you're like, why the fuck would you say that? And then he's like, oh, I'm just saying it. Like I just don't respect him on that front. I know he's a world class fighter. Obviously, he can beat 99% of the humans in the world, including myself. But I'm just not a huge fan. And Drickus is fun to watch. He fights like a drunk guy at a bar. That he's gonna fight Hamzat Chimaev next, who's kind of that boogeyman of the division because he's just basically a pure wrestler slash potential submission threat. And I struggle to see how Drickus is gonna win that, other than the fact he's huge and really good at MMA. But I think matchup wise, like 90% of that like that weight is gonna struggle with Dricus or with Hamza, excuse me. And I think that's gonna be where the title's gonna shift, and you're gonna see a boring weight class basically because I grew up wrestling. I respect it. I enjoy watching pure wrestling, but MMA grappling is not always the most fun. The guys that are fun to watch are, your Charles Oliveira's basically that are actively trying to look for submissions. And to be fair, Hamzat does, unless his name is Kamara Usman. But he gasses out, so like I just see a lot of these foreign, like these Russian, Dagestani, Georgian fighters taking over like a Marab or a Bilal. Uh, is technically lives in the U.S., but he's Muslim and kind of identifies as that Russian or not Russian, Egyptian wrestler. I think you're gonna see a shift in the sport where it's gonna be a little less casual friendly because you're gonna see basically control grappling, which is the most boring kind, where guys are basically just trying to get the win, which is kind of their style. So then jumping in the co-main was the women's fight, which is Zhang Weili beat Tatiana Suarez, and I didn't coming into this fight. Tatiana was a crazy big favorite, especially as a challenger, and I didn't get it because if you're a Zhang fan or a Zhang Wei Li fan, you know how good she is. She's a monster. Like in my opinion, she's the best MMA female fighter in the world right now. Any weight, I think she's number one over Valentina, who lost to Grasso. Like Zhang is a monster. So I'm sure a bunch of people that if they were smart won money betting on her, but she just kind of showed Tatiana there's levels to the game is really it. She beat her outside the first round in her game. She outstruck her, outgrappled her. There was no submissions or anything like that, but Jong hits like a truck. It's a great wrestler and has enough of a submission of threat to where people can't be comfortable living or with her on the ground really that I didn't get the odds basically. And after this fight, there's not really a clear title contender for Jong. So my guess is that she's gonna go up and fight Valentina Shevchenko in a double champ super fight, which is really the only fight to make for her right now, unless you want her to sit out a long time and try to generate some new upcoming talent. But I don't see that happening. So my bet is that they move her up. Let her go fight Valentina and try to get that double champ status. If you get her that upper belt, that kind of gives you the option of refreshing some of those contenders that Valentina's already beat. Like Alexa Grasso would be a one at the top of the list who was just champ. That I would be surprised if they or the UFC did not want Jong to beat Valentina in that. Plus Valentina's older, so it's definitely a possibility. We'll have to see how the weight difference would play a factor, but I do think that Jong actually lines or matches up pretty well with Valentina at this stage of her career. But those are kind of the main takeaways from the UFC fight. There wasn't a let's see. I guess the only other big one was Israel Adesanya and Kelvin Gastelum's interim title fight got inducted to the Hall of Fame, which is one of the greatest fights I've ever seen. That's the most famous moment of that fight was heading into the fifth round. Adesanya is basically looking at Gastelum and goes, "I am prepared to die," and you can read his lips after he's all beat up. That's one of the most entertaining fights I've ever seen. It was kind of the end of Kelvin Gastelum's legitimate like contender career, and it was the fight that catapulted Adesanya to superstardom basically. So, uh, yeah, like congrats to those guys, well deserved, and Adesanya will make it as a normal fighter as well as that fight. So, um, I think he's got a shot to make it as well with the Pereira Adesanya 2 fight, but that's just me. Uh, and yeah, that's kind of what we have going on in the sports world between the NFL and UFC. So thank thank God I was wrong. Thank you, Philadelphia Chiefs, for making my year better and defeating the Kansas City Chiefs and retiring Travis Kelsey. And congratulations to Dricus Du Plessis. And this has been the Sports Casual. My name is Jack Paisley. Thanks for watching.